Hi. Well, the first thing on our agenda today is the question, what is this deal with this 108 forms of sum plus scarta? And why do we care? Why am I going to do a series of about 5 videos about it? Well, it's an interesting question, and to answer it, or at least respond to it, I want to talk about why it uh, has become important to me. And I guess the short form is to say, for the same reason that I'm doing this channel at all, which is first to preserve Prabhakara Shastri's work, uh, because as you know, or you may not know, depending on how many videos you've seen, um, I began with Prabhakar Shastri in 1976 at Andhra University, and I have a bit more to say about that. The last time that we talked in person was in 2003 at University of Wisconsin, which was holding a symposium in his honor. And that's when he told me that all that's left of what I think is his truly remarkable, almost revolutionary uh, approach to Ashtadhyayi uh, are my notes and my memory. That's it. And that's when I realized I really needed to get going and learn the material better, relearn it, learn it better, and share it any way I could because it really matters. And the second reason is that it's the only way I can learn the grammar better, which is also the same two reasons that I would shared the grammar for 6.5, 7 years at the Sri Lakshmi temple near here, outside of Boston. So along with that, I want to give you a little bit more idea of my teacher's way of working, and maybe more than that over time. We'll see. Um, so, uh, again, I'm repeating for people who've watched every video, but it's probably not that many people. It was a wonderful and pretty much unique experience these days. It was one-to-one with Prabhakar Shastri for, I think, about 3 hours, 7 days a week. And it was one-to-one, and it was entirely oral. There was no whiteboard, blackboard, notes, nothing on paper at all, ever, except my notes that I took. And he had that fortunate capacity to read my Devanagari upside down when I was copying it down. So, and those notes, and by the way, so just show and tell, those notes are mostly contained in this notebook, um, which covers most of a couple of years of work and covers Akshara Samamnaya, Vidishesha Prakarana Sutras, all of the Sandhi Sutras, and all of Karaka Sutras. But, and here's the point for today, he also provided me with accessory notes, um, and they are in this book. And this is only covering uh, the Akshara Samamnaya, Vidishesha Prakarana, and Sandhi Sutras. And it is one of the notes in here that got us going on the 108 forms. Um, Now, the catch with this is that, except maybe at the very beginning, when he was elaborating issues around uh, places and efforts of articulation, I think. He never uh, discussed these notes with me. We never translated them, and he never actually told me what they were or where they came from. And in a way, this is the most marvelous thing to me because I think, or certainly the way it turned out, he knew or he had a belief that the day would come when I would really want them. And that day first came when I was sharing the grammar at the Sri Lakshmi temple, because that was the first time that I clearly felt the need to go beyond the core information he'd given me, which was very good and included issues around interactions between sutras in terms of uh, exceptions and so on, but not really the broader functional aspect, which I consider the ultimate step in learning the grammar. Um, and so that's when I began to understand the value of commentary, which really, when I worked with him, the commentary was not a thing. Everything, we were going so fast. I think of it now, and this probably won't mean much to you, even in India, but reminded me of the Calcutta Mail, which buzzed right through Vizag really fast, and uh, and had a diesel locomotive. We moved along pretty quickly. So my task was to understand and to learn the sutras per se. And that was, to say I never got to the end of that would be honest. So um, when in sharing the grammar, that's when I began to really have the opportunity to think about each sutra in the bigger context of the grammar. And that's also when I began to appreciate Siddhanta Kaumati and to some extent other commentaries, occasionally even Mahabhashya, but very much Siddhanta Kaumati. And as you probably know, this is my shorthand of thinking about it, but Ashtadhyayi is organized along, it's like a skeleton. The logic has to do with the structure of the sutras, whereas Siddhanta Kaumati has to do with their function. Also, Ashtadhyayi was never understood to be uh, a grammar in sense of school grammar uh, for students to learn. It was for those who knew the language to know what the correct language is and what the incorrect language is. So as time went on, it became more and more clear that students needed help. And about 400 years ago, Bhattoji Dikshita provided the most evolved Prakriya grammar and the one that has, for better or worse, really supplanted Ashtadhyayi to a large part, maybe more than that, in the study of of the grammar. So, and Siddhanta Kaumati is hopeless in terms of the internal structure of the grammar, but is wonderful in terms of the functional structure of the grammar. So it is an enormous gift that he gave us. Now, today we're going to be talking about another special little gift, in my view, that he tucked away in his discussion of not directly under Samahasuti, but in Visarjaniyasya Saha, in those sutras, he tucked away a special little gift. And I never really understood that that gift was there until recently, when I heard, where I remembered about this idea of 108 forms of something, or an awful lot of forms of something. And that's when I went back to, or I went to Prabhakar Shastri's notes on this sutra or what we're going to discuss. And I posted just uh, when it came to Samahasuti, it was just a little elaborated on what we covered in class. And I included a picture of my notes from class or from my lesson. I posted it on my channel page just to show we were very precise and concise, but not over concise. So I'm going to actually review with you exactly what that was. And, but then I guess you could say, luckily, in looking at it, I went past the first page of notes on Samahasuti and I came to this, which I posted on my page some time ago. And that really got things going because I realized that it, like a number of this um, pieces that he'd given me, were from Siddhanta comedy. Uh, Maybe some organized a little differently or something, but basically from Siddhanta comedy. And now deciphering this was not uh, terribly obvious to me at first, but that's practice. But in it, Bhattoji is very, I think, sort of enthusiastically explains the sequence of rules or of operations that result in the possible forms of sum plus karta as being 108. And that really fascinated me. I looked around and it seemed that other grammarians, if they thought about that at all, didn't really take it seriously, including a contemporary scholar of the grammar, Professor Sharma, who does mention it and has a couple of things to say about it, but also twice points out using an English word that I'd never heard and I had to look up. But that going into it in detail is a bridge too far. It's too far to actually work out everything that Bhattoji implied in his um, commentary. So that's when I decided to get with the program and work it out. And so the reason I'm sharing it is I think Patoji meant it as a present. I think he meant it as a puzzle, partly thanks to working so long with Prabhakar Shastri. I'm convinced that grammarians are both playful and have a sense of humor. And we will come to some of the more humorous stories to go with some of the sutras a little later. But so I think Patoji meant it to be a puzzle. And at least for me, it was a wonderful puzzle because it helped me do what I needed to do to move ahead with my own understanding of the Sandhi Sutras. It required really going through the Sandhi Sutras and thinking very carefully about their specific operations and how they fit into place here. So that's what we're going to be talking about, and I'm going to be sharing. Now, one issue is that of the 12 sutras involved, we have only just mentioned 3 of them, and all the others are in the future. uh, Along those lines, we are now exactly, I think, halfway through the Sandhi Sutras. So there's a lot more to see. And as we go along, it becomes more and more interesting. And this is, I think, a great moment, and it happens to be the right place that it occurs in to do this exercise that Bhattoji gave us, because I don't think there's any real suggestion that all of these forms occur in common usage. They may have occurred somewhere, but I'm not sure that they did. Now, one other recommendation, as we do this, I strongly advocate that you have a copy of the Akshara Samamnaya within reach, because you'll see that some of the pratyahara involved are not ones with which we're familiar, but getting them right is really important to what we're doing moving forward. So our actual task today, as far as the question goes, involves really just reviewing our last three sutras. You might want to look at our last three, not the Mahabharata one, I mean Mahabhashya one, but the last three Ashtadhyayi sutras. But we'll just quickly go over them, and I'll tell you why we're doing that in just a second. So, atra nunasika purvasya tuva, atra nunasika purvasya tuva. Atra is here, and the here is concerning the injunction of ru, concerning injunction of ru. So when ru comes, atra nunasika purvasya tuva, anunasika will optionally come in place of the one which precedes ru. And it's unambiguous. Sometimes it's not totally clear whether it's optional or not, but it ends with va. So we know it's optional. So that's our first. Now, this all is presented in the grammar as we saw before without any examples until the third sutra here. Anunasakat paronuswaraha. Anunasakat paronuswaraha. And so this is that particular use of panchami, which is in the absence of, in the absence of. So if you choose not to go through that door number one of Anunasika preceding Ru, then you're obliged to include anuswara. Then you're obliged to include anuswara. And so then finally we get to the sutra Samahasuti. Samahasuti. Now, when sut follows in place of some, ru shall come. When sut follows, that's tasminiti nirdishte purvasya saptami. When sut follows, suti. Now, sut is a augment or a grammatical term that we don't need to understand completely, but we just need to know where it occurs. And it occurs in our first example. So our example is sum plus skarta, sum plus skarta. So here, the ru comes in place of some. And when we say in place of some, we think back to our rules of the road, and we know that alontisya, in place of the final one, alontisya. So then we get from some skarta, we get sar skarta. Now we know that the of sar is ru, but the tricky thing with ru, as we've said before, you don't know it's ru by looking at it, but also that triggers other sutras that pertain to ru, but also those that pertain to itself. So at this point, there are two options from Atranunaska Purvasya Tuva. We have Sanskarta, Sanskata, that's the sa with Anunasika. And then we have through Anuswarasya Yai Parasavarnaha, Anunasikat Paronuswaraha. Um, we have the Anunasika in Anuswara instead of the Anunasika. So key thing is this leaves us with two forms. And as we proceed with our elaboration of the various forms of samskata, these two lineages will exist separately, and they will also be elaborated uh, separately along the way. So that's where we're going to leave it for today. The first step is now I'm going to give up on pronouncing Anuswara pretty soon um, because it's hard to pronounce. I've tried to understand more about Anuswara um, in terms of pronunciation, and also I will reveal now that there is a part of this process that involves doubling Anuswara, and that left me completely in the weeds. And but so we have the Anunasika Sa and the uh, Anuswara Skarta. Now, the one thing we do know, uh, uh, Nasika Anuswarasya, from our Sthanani, we know that Nasika is the place of articulation of Anuswara. And so I've been practicing to see how I can um, uh, pronounce it without having it slip into Nyamangananam. Uh, it can be done. And I think the main difference is that, well, first of all, it is an akshara itself, and also that it's unvoiced. So you do have to move your tongue in a way to direct the airflow through your nose more, but you don't have to voice it. That's as far as I got with that. So we will go on to 4 more videos, specifically step by step through the uh, evolution of the 108 forms of Sanskarta.